Alrighty. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Today is May the 6th. Coming into this morning, yesterday, the main news driver was Tesla. So we had Elon with Tesla. They had something going on. You can see overall markets was dragged down just because of Tesla. Tesla ended up dropping at one point over 17% in one day. Now you can see that Tesla is bouncing a little bit here in the pre-market. We'll talk about some of the levels I'll be looking for coming into today. What can we expect at least for this session, at least in the morning? Before we do that, good morning. What's up, everyone? Good morning, Fourth. What's up, Jeff, JT, Josh, Katrina, Martin, BGP. What's up, Andreas, Ryan, Michelle, Audrey, Wayne, Daniel, Darth. What's up, Miss Reggie, Monty, Hector, Edison, Nonth. What's up, Robert, Infinite. Good morning, Lauren. What's up, Paul? Paul again. What's up, everyone? B Roots, Ashley, Luis, Vincent, Anthony. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's get into the major indices and then we'll get started here. What's up? Okay. First things first, let me actually clear off a couple levels here for what we're going to be talking about coming into today. Let me actually just remove this. And right now you can see coming into today here for the ES. So what we have here is your last week's highs being the 6,000 key psych level. We talked about this level being really key yesterday just because we had this double top. So for the overall markets, we end up actually hitting this level here in the pre-market. So as you can see, markets gravitated up and towards your last week's highs here in the pre-market. We end up rejecting off this level and then we end up pushing back towards the downside. So really longs yesterday was going to be very difficult just because we already hit one of your main objective being your last week's highs. So if you go back onto lower time frames, the levels that we had established was your previous day lows. We also had your previous day highs marked out. And you can see we had your last week's highs in markets, right? Fairly volatile right off the bat. We actually had a news event. So we had unemployment along with a news event that launched the market towards the upside. Then we end up just kind of ranging, right? Pretty big volatility between your 8:30 candles, and then yesterday later into the day, right, the ES wasn't as affected compared to the NQ just because Tesla on the drop, right? Tesla is a bigger part of the Nasdaq than it is the ES, so that's why the NQ ended up having a bigger drop than the ES itself. So for the ES coming into today, we're still fairly bullish here on the higher time frames. If we zoom out just a little bit, you can see that we're still building up these higher lows. We still have not broken structure. For me, the break of structure point here for the ES is going to be your Monday's lows that we created. So for the overall market, as long as you maintain above these higher lows, I can expect, right, ES to eventually push back up and towards, now it's going to be this week's highs and also your last week's highs here as well. So if you go into the 15-minute time frame, I'm still very much bullish towards the upside, as I mentioned. Other levels that we can have drawn out is going to be our our low that we created on Wednesday, along with your pre-market session from yesterday here as well. So this is basically the level that we have to see price reclaim. It's going to be above our 5972. If you can get above this level, consolidate, we can see this push back towards the upside. I do not think markets are going to make a new high on Friday today, just because we already took out your main objective being that last week's highs. There's a better chance that if we do reclaim this key level, we're just going to consolidate and stay in between its previous day's range. So we have a pretty big previous day's range here. We're about to open up right inside the middle of the range. We do have some red folder news, if I'm not mistaken, just a little bit after market open. Let me actually just check that out real quick. So we actually do not have, we have red folder news at 8:30. So at least for the economic calendar today, we have some red folder news here at 8:30. Just non-farm enrollment. We also have unemployment change here as well. So we'll talk about this in about 25 minutes, but no red folder news after 8:30. Next week, we have core CPI and then we have core PPI and then we have consumer sentiment. So we have a decent amount of red folder news that's important next week. As for today, it's just going to be 8:30 non-farm enrollment. So coming into today, we'll see the reaction that we have at 8:30 around your 5972 here on the ES. Let's go on to the SPY chart. So for the SPY chart, the levels that I have marked out in this case was your 598. We also have your Wednesday's lows, which is your 595.45. So for the overall markets, as you can see, similar thing for the SPY as the ES. We end up taking out your last week's highs here in the pre-market. So any sort of long position, right, this hold above your 598 would have made it a lot more difficult for continuation, just because we end up taking out this level here in the pre-market, and then we end up reversing off your last week's highs, and now you can see we're just right back inside of its previous day's range. So currently for the overall market, we want to mark out our previous day's highs along with our previous day lows. We want to see the reaction that we have off your 595.45. If you can reclaim this level, consolidate, we can see a slower mover back up and towards your 597 and potentially above being your 598. If we do reject off of your 595, next levels towards the downside is going to be the gap that we created. Very small gap in your pre-market lows here for SPY. So we'll keep an eye out on your 595 coming into market open today. As for the NQ, let's go into the daily chart. It does seem like all my levels are missing. Let me see if I can bring this back up. So for the NQ coming into today, fairly similar thesis as the ES. If I go back onto the 1 hour chart, yesterday we ended up taking out your last week's highs here in the pre-market. So you can see, right, nice push towards the upside. We're expecting the markets to gravitate up and towards your last week's highs being your 21840. We end up taking this out here in the actual pre-market. So if I mark out this level, now go back onto lower time frames, you can see markets end up taking out your last week's high in the pre-market. We end up consolidating for a bit and then eventually gravitating towards the upside. We finally ended up taking out this level, and then once we got back underneath, right, price ended up having a nice pushback towards the downside, along with, right, Tesla dropping. That's why also, right, NASDAQ ended up dropping here as well. So for the NASDAQ, if you go into the daily time frame, the 1 hour time frame, as you can see here, right, we're still building up higher lows towards the upside. Now we end up taking out your last week's highs. So for the NQ, it's most likely going to consolidate for a Friday. Very unlikely that it's going to make a brand new high for the week, because now it would have to get all the way back above number one. It's 2176. And then it would have to gravitate all the way back up and towards your previous day highs, which is a very big move, at least for Friday, without any sort of news. So coming into today, the key levels for the NQ, we could actually mark out other levels here as well. I'm not sure where these levels went, but what we do have marked out is your Wednesday's highs along with your Tuesday's key pivot level here as well. So for the NASDAQ coming to today, what we like to see is a reaction off of your 21,640. If you can maintain your 21,640, we can see this push back up in towards your 21,747. If we get underneath your 21,640, the next level is going to be back down in towards your 21,553 here for the NQ. If you go into the QQQ, you can see this chart a little bit better. But in the Qs in this case, similar thing, right, taking out your last week's highs. Now you can see we're right around your 526 in this 528. Coming into today, what we'll like to see is the reaction that we have off these general levels. If we can maintain above your 526, we can see this push back up and towards your 528. If we get underneath your 526, the next level is going to be back down in towards your previous day close and your pre-market lows here as well. For at least the Qs in SPY today, I am fairly neutral. Higher time frame is still bullish, but at least for this week now, after rejecting off of your last week's highs on the Qs and the SPY, I most likely expect the markets to consolidate, right? After that initial move that we have within the first kind of 30 minutes to an hour, depending if it's going to consolidate or if you're going to have a move higher, I do expect it to be inside of the range, most likely between your 529 and this 526 here for the overall markets. Now let's go on to some tech names. Tesla. So this is the main one. Let's actually remove a few levels here on Tesla. We can redo our drawing since I ended up having a really big push towards the downside after breaking underneath key levels that I mentioned yesterday. So for Tesla, if we start off on the 1 hour time frame, the levels that we had marked out yesterday was our 325. So our 325 was super key. We talked about how there wasn't too much volume in this general area. So on this push up, you can also see we had a big gap in the markets here as well. Whenever you don't have too much volume, as it pushes higher, right on the way back down, you're going to have a very fast move here as well, just because there hasn't been too much activity in this general area, right? A lot of the times, if it consolidates, you'll see markets are really slow around these general points of interest just because there's a lot of volume, there's a lot of liquidity, right? Markets are just going to consolidate in this general area. But as soon as we break underneath key pivot points, markets are going to move very fast and very volatile just because, right, there's a huge imbalance in the overall market. So for Tesla, once we got underneath this 325, the next level was this daily gap. So we had this daily gap drawn out, which was towards our 307, and the markets ended up having a really big push towards the downside. Of course, it was affected here with news as well. So we had our daily gap, and then now the next levels on the daily time frame was this daily pivot high, which was the area that we broke out from, which is your 295. So your 295 we have marked out, and then for Tesla, now we can go back onto the lower time frame. So coming into today here for Tesla, right, you can see 325, big rejections, big push towards the downside here. Now you can see, right, big push lower. Currently, we're actually gapping up. So we're gapping up right inside of the middle of yesterday's range, right between our 295. What we like to do is just mark out the box that we have here in the pre-market. So consolidation in the pre-market. Now what we like to see is one of two things. I personally would much rather see, right, the break underneath your 295, right, push back down in towards your previous day close. This is what I personally would like to see after consolidation. You could very much well, right, hold your 295 and have this mean reversion back up in towards your 307. That's also a possibility. I would only be interested in trading this if it either bounced off your 295, looking for the hold, or it would be the break above your pre-market high for push back up in towards your 307 and above. We'll see the price action coming into today. It's really going to be based off of your intraday price action, just because the higher time frames now, after yesterday's day, I am leaning a little bit more towards the downside. But with this gap up here plus a Friday, what I can expect is just the markets to gravitate down in towards your gap fills. I don't think the Tesla is going to gravitate all the way back down in towards your previous day lows. It is a possibility if it does stay heavy, but most likely with this gap up, the levels towards the downside is just going to be your gap fill coming into this morning. So if you go into the regular trading hours, the key levels that we can have marked out is going to be now your 287. So 287.22. Now we can go back onto the extended trading hours. This is going to be my level here for Tesla. If it can break underneath 295, I'd like to see this push down in towards your 287, your gap fill here on Tesla. As I mentioned, what we're going to do is just draw out the box, right? Consolidation. And based off of the reaction that we have off your box, right, we can look to trade this down in towards your gap fill or potentially trade this up in towards your 307. So those are the levels I have for Tesla coming into today. You can actually also mark out this level here as well. So you can redo this drawing, refine some of our levels. So 295 along with our 297 at least is going to be key coming into market open. Let's go into the next levels that we have drawn out. Actually, just get rid of a few things here as well. For NVIDIA, similar thesis, right? Key levels for NVIDIA was your last week's highs. So if I remove this level, this actually are 243. So this was a very key level. But if I was to mark out one level, it would be your last week's highs. We can also mark out your pivot high here as well, which is going to be this 143. Yesterday, I talked about NVIDIA. If we can reclaim back above your Tuesday's highs, this will look good for a continuation back towards the upside here. Right off the bat, you can see nice reactions right off the bat. But once we end up reclaiming back above, right, market structure was still holding, right, never broke underneath your previous day lows. We're holding the higher lows. We end up having this nice push right in towards where your last week's highs. So your last week's highs, 143.50. In this earnings key pivot high here as well, 143.86. Now with the overall markets, right, if we just zoom out just a little bit, we end up rejecting off of your last week's highs. So now for NVIDIA, right? Rejection, pushback towards the downside. Currently now you can see we're about to open up in between. It's 143. Basically, if you were to mark out your Monday's lows and now your this week's highs, which is Thursday, you can see we're fairly in equilibrium, right? Equilibrium would be your 139.50. If we're looking at its previous day's range is going to be in between our 143 and our 139. What I'd like to see here for Nvidia, for more upside, it's going to have to be back above your 142. So if you want to see some more upside, it's going to be above your 142 for continuation towards the highs. Currently, we're right around your 140. So where you want to be looking to participate in is 142 along with your 139. You could be looking for the bounce play off your 139 for a pushback towards the upside, or you could be looking for, right, the rejection off your 142 for a pushback down in towards your 140. I don't expect too many trends. At least you can find some trends on the lower time frames, at least higher time frame trends. It's going to have to get back above your 142 here on this name. As for Apple, this one, higher time frame, just a lot more consolidation, not too much to talk about on this ticker. Just a lot of consolidation. If we're looking at this week's price action, Monday's lows. Now we also have this week's highs, right in between your 200 key cycle levels. So for Apple, we can skip out on this one. As for Microsoft, so Microsoft, we talked about this one gravitating eventually towards all-time highs. Very anticlimactic move towards the upside. I would like to see some volatility pick up on this name, but we just hit your main target, all-time highs. Very slow mover intraday. This is a name where you want to just be holding right long term. But for Microsoft, you can see nice push up in towards your 468.31 all-time highs. Now we just like to see it maintain above your all-time highs if we want to see any sort of continuation back towards the upside. I'm bullish on Microsoft because now we just hit all-time highs, but not too much to talk about on this one just because there's no volatility on this name. As for Meta, the key levels that I have marked out yesterday was our previous day's high. So Meta key levels is our 688. This is a level I'd like to see hold for a continuation towards your 696 and above. Yesterday, you had a very small reaction right off the bat, but it didn't really do too much off this level. Now that we're actually reclaiming back above your 688 for Meta now, we can be looking for, the hold. Similar thing as yesterday, the hold back above your Wednesday's highs. Now we actually reclaim. So the reclaim now showing that buyers are stepping in. Now you like to see the hold of your 688 for a push back up and towards your 694 and above, being your 696. So that's the key levels that you're going to have for for Meta coming into today. As for Google, this one, not really doing too much. If we're looking at Monday's price action compared to where we're at currently, we're just consolidating in this general area, 170.50, basically Monday's open. Not too much to talk about in this case, We can also mark out your previous day highs if you'd like. Continuation towards the upside on a Friday, it would have to base above really your Monday's highs. And you like to see a break above your previous day highs here, 172 on Google. As for Amazon, this one ended up having a really solid push back up in towards your last week's highs here as well in the pre-market. So for Apple, I keep saying these wrong tickers. So for Amazon, levels that we have established yesterday was our previous day highs along with this 209. You can see Amazon right off the bat, nice hold of your previous day highs. And then we end up having this opening drive back towards the upside. And then we end up pushing all the way back later in towards your last week's highs, 212. So we hit your last week's highs. And now what we'd like to see here for Amazon is really the reaction that we have off of your 211 last week's highs. And then we also have another key pivot point, which is your 209. So for Amazon, these are your key levels that we have, Potentially you could be looking for the dip, higher low off of your 209 for a pushback up and towards your pre-market highs. Another possibility is if it could break above your pre-market highs, you can see this push up and towards your 211. I'm not too interested in the pre-market levels today besides Tesla. That's the only levels I'm going to have marked out, at least in the pre-market. The rest of the levels, you're just going to have marked out either your last week's highs or you're going to mark out your previous day lows. As for AMD, This one, the key levels that I have marked out on AMD was our Wednesday's highs, or 119.20. You can see right off the bat rejections off of your Wednesday's highs. Really big push towards the downside, and then you can see was not able to hold your Tuesday's highs either. Once we got back below the second time, end up having a retest for a pushback towards the downside. So for AMD, as you can see here, I'm not as bullish anymore just because we're breaking underneath your Wednesday's lows. Now you can see it's a lot more neutral after having this big push up on Monday and Tuesday. Now Thursday, we broke below a few key levels. For AMD, what I would like to see is the reaction that we have off your 115. If you can hold above your 115, you can see this push back up and towards your 117. Besides that, here on AMD, right, break back below your 115, we'll see this push back down in towards your previous day lows here on this ticker. So keep an eye out on your 116 actually, along with your pivot point from its previous day and your Wednesday's low here as well. As for Netflix, this is the one that's been having continuation towards the upside. Multiple touches. We have your Wednesday's price action. Once we got above your Wednesday's highs, we end up having this nice retest for continuation back up in towards your previous day highs and above. This one's at all-time high, so every dip is going to get bought up on this name. Okay, all right. Let me grab some water here. If you guys do have any tickers, you guys can now drop them in the chat. We do have about 8 minutes until red folder news at 8:30. So I will wait until then. Yeah, if you guys do have any tickers, you guys can drop them in the chat. I'll take a look at them for the next 8 minutes. If you guys are enjoying this so far, I appreciate if you guys drop me a like and sub. All right, let's see. Take a shot every time he says right off. Yeah, I know. I say some things quite a bit. It's just like repetition. All right, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Good morning. What's up, everyone? Did I mean May? Yeah, I meant June. Let's see. Let's go over some names. Is 2-to-1 leverage enough for beginners? It's good to not have leverage when you're starting out, right? Options are already leveraged. So if you're trading futures, they're also leveraged. Trading Forex, other things along the lines, those, depending on the broker they have, are also going to be leveraged. I personally, you technically have to trade on leverage. So if you're trading like Forex or if you're trading futures, you're going to be trading on margin, but you don't want to it depends what you mean by leverage. I have a question regarding a small account. AMD went over that one, AVGO. I have a question regarding growing a small account like $1,000. How do you have to trade stocks in mind that have one stock? How do we trade stocks having in mind that one stock is 100 to 300 USD without leverage? Will there be small? No, options are already leveraged. You can't really trade that much. So if you're trading with, let's say, a small account and you're trading options, the max you can trade with proper risk management is really one contract, which makes it very difficult because you can't practice proper risk management. So not proper risk management, proper scaling, money management. So for, let's say, growing a small account, you can't trade things like Tesla, but you can trade smaller names like Apple, Nvidia, SPY with one contract, right? One contract can be anywhere between $100 to $300, and you can risk around 10%. As for AVGO, this one just had earnings. Key level is your previous all-time highs, your 250 key psych level. Now, if you go into the 1 hour time frame, this is really the level that we like to see hold on AVGO, right? So now you can see a little bit of a drop here. It's only down 2%. What I would like to see is a hold, right? Day one reversal. I like to see day one reversal, push back up and towards the highs here on AVGO for a push back towards the upside. This is your previous all-time highs, and this is the exact level I'd like to see hold, 250 here on AVGO. As for eBay, this one, going to push back up and towards your all-time highs here. We made it all-time highs in COVID. Now for eBay, this one is going to gravitate back up and towards, just based off the weekly time frame. You can see higher lows were being built. Next levels above your 72 is going to be back up and towards, right, your all-time highs being your 81 key psych level. As for eBay, you just want to keep marking out these highs. You actually can see we're breaking out as of this week Also last week as well, right? Monday's price action, nice push towards the upside. Now for eBay, you just want to mark out, right, your previous day highs. Every single time we make a new high, this is the level of support that we like to see continue back towards the upside. All right, let's go into a few other names here. So Palantir, similar to Palantir, this one hit all-time highs. So as for Palantir, I am still very much bullish towards the upside, but at least after hitting your all-time highs, there hasn't been too many good trading opportunities on Palantir just because we're consolidating in between your previous all-time highs and your new all-time highs that we made. So if we go into the lower time frames, turn back on the drawing tools, as you can see here, on Palantir, we're basically just consolidating in this general area, your 133 along with your 119. Now for Palantir, what I'd like to see for some more upside, you can see we had a nice hold of your 119, push back up in towards your 133, but now we'd like to see the break above your 133 for any sort of continuation towards the upside. If you buy these dips, right, you're gonna have to sell on the pops back up in towards your 133. Now for Palantir, you can see a pretty sharp reaction coming into this week. We can see a potential bigger move down here if we can break underneath this 119. If you keep consolidating, break underneath your 119, you could see a bigger push towards the downside back towards your 105. But currently, until we can break underneath your 120 and really outside this box, what we're going to be looking for is just your bounces, right? Bounces off the low of the range and rejections off the top of the range. Now for Palantir, with this mini bounce, I'd like to see a push back up and towards the middle of the range, 125.43. HIMS, similar thing. You can see really nice push towards the upside. We end up gravitating towards your high that we created, your 66. End up having a rejection off of here. So now we're just going to consolidate a little bit more here on the daily time frame. I am still very much bullish here on HIMS. I do expect to move eventually back up and towards your all-time highs here. But for now, what we're going to create, right, a bigger kind of cup and handle on this name for a push back towards the upside. So for HIMS, now the levels that I do have marked out is just going to be your 51 key psych. We have a bigger box in this case, but my box for HIMS is going to be right 51. Right, this is your top of the range. This is your bottom of the range. Until we can break underneath your 50, I would stay a little bit more neutral, leaning towards the upside. As for long positions, this is going to be a little bit more trickier of a long just because you have upper rejections off your 66. You would really like to see now it's going to be the reclaim back above your 54, potential base back up and towards your 58 here on HIMS. As for now, right, 51 and your 54 are going to be your key levels. Because you look at Hood, bought 1074 calls yesterday. As for Hood, this one, I've been bullish on Hood for a very long time now. As for Hood, I have a bunch of shares in my long term. I've been expecting it to gravitate towards eventually your all-time highs, at least in the short term here, depending on what expiration you have. For Hood, this one I'm still very much bullish on. You can see Monday's price action, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you can see we end up making a brand new high for the week. Now for Friday, it's going to have to, number one, get back above your 74.67 for any sort of continuation back up and towards your previous day highs and above here on Hood. What I'd like to see is it just consolidate, right? Maintain above your previous day lows. And then once we break back above your 74.69, we can see this push back up and towards, right, your previous day highs. As for short term, right, key levels is going to be your 74.67. Long term, if you look at this on the daily time frame, right, you see this pretty big upper wick here. So we're going to most likely consolidate. We will see if we can break above your 74, right? That's the only way we can make a brand new high for the week. If we reject off this level, we're just going to consolidate for Friday and then maybe consolidate. And then next week, potentially have that break back towards the upside on Hood. All right. We do have some news here in about, actually we just had news. So 8:30 just hit. We have some red folder news currently. We have non-farm enrollment. We also have the unemployment rate, and the main thing here is the non-farm enrollment. So you can see it came in forecasted 126. The actual was your 139, previous 177. We'll see how the market's reacting off this level. Currently, you can see nice push right off the bat, currently right back in towards our 21,760 here for the NQ. For the ES, we're having a nice reaction off of our 5972. Let's go into the SPY chart. So currently the SPY, as you can see, popping up in towards the top of the range. So for the overall markets now, we just had red folder news here at 8:30. The level that I would like to see long positions is really above your 598. So similar to kind of yesterday's session, the key levels, at least I would like to look for buying opportunities for continuation higher is number one, either off your 595, right, dip, and we look for continuation, or price is going to have to get above your 598, retest, and we have continuation towards the upside, right? This would be a retest on the higher time frames, right? I'm not looking for an immediate retest above this level because it very much well could just break above or reject and just come right back towards the downside. I want to see higher time frame break above this 598, right? Retest. That means we'd be above your Wednesday's highs, your last week's highs, above this key pivot level here as well. You can see markets push towards the upside. We tried basing above this level. And then once we got back underneath, right, we ended up rejecting and pushing price towards the downside. So similar thing now, if we can reclaim, most likely now for a second time, if we base above, there's a greater chance we end up gravitating higher just based off the higher time frames and the fact that we're able to reclaim back above this 598. As for the QQQ, the key levels I have for the Qs is all the way back up in towards your 530. So you can see the SPY in this case, a little bit more bullish than the QQQ just because we had Tesla yesterday dragging down the overall market. Tesla's still down a decent amount. So that's why the Qs is a little bit farther away from your 530 and your last week's highs. So for any sort of upside today, I'm much more interested in trading the SPY just because it has relative strength just based off of yesterday's price action. For the QQQ, the levels I have marked out, 526.50 along with this 528. What I'd like to see here now on the Qs, similar thing, right? The bounce off of your 526 for any sort of long positions. You could potentially be looking for the base above your 528, but the key levels is going to be all the way back up and towards your 530.50 here on the QQQ. As for the NQ, I have a few other levels, but really what I can have marked out is going to be your 21858, and I have another key pivot level, which is going to be your 21760. Let's go into some of the tech names to see how it's affected. Tesla, you can see no reaction whatsoever with unemployment, just because there's a bigger news event here, which was with Trump and Elon yesterday. So whenever the markets have two news events, you can see, right, the SPY and Qs, we end up having a pop with unemployment. But for Tesla, this one did not move whatsoever. The reason it didn't move is because we had news yesterday, which is a lot more relevant to the news we had in the morning. So for Tesla, we're still going to do the exact same thing. We're going to draw your box here in the pre-market. If you can break underneath, as I mentioned, you can see this potential gap fill back towards the downside. So we're still going to keep an eye out on Tesla coming to market open. As for NVIDIA, the key level for me is going to be this 142. As I mentioned, I'm really not too interested in longs today, at least on some of these tech names after hitting your main objective being your last week's highs. We could be looking for this reclaim back above your 142. It's going to be a little bit more tricky here with this gap towards the downside plus a Friday, but we'll keep an eye out on your 142 here on NVIDIA. If you can break above base, we can look for this trade back up and towards the highs here. As for other names, Apple still not doing too much. Microsoft, this one's at all-time high, so potentially we can keep an eye out on Microsoft today for just continuation above your previous, now your all-time highs. Let's actually mark out this level here as well. So for Microsoft, I have actually two key levels. So I have your all-time highs in the pre-market along with your all-time highs in the actual market hours. For Microsoft, this one would be more based off of the 5 and 15-minute time frame, but as long as we maintain above your previous all-time highs, I expect potential trend day here on Microsoft and just gravitate towards the upside. As for Meta, what I'd like to see now is a hold of your Tuesday's highs or 688 hold for this continuation back up and towards your previous day highs and above. It does seem like it's going to break above your previous day highs in the pre-market. So for Meta, I'm still interested in this bounce off your 688, or now it's going to be right the hold above your previous day highs for a continuation towards your 695 and above. Google, now what I like to see, hold above your previous day highs for continuation. Amazon, I actually do like Amazon still as well. So for Amazon, this one key levels that we have is going to be this 211. So if we zoom out just a little bit here on Amazon, you can see so far we're kind of building back towards the upside here, right? Just a lot of consolidation. Next levels that we do have is going to be this high right here at your 214. So for Amazon, if we zoom out just a little bit here on the 1 hour time frame, what I would like to see now is it push back up and towards your 214 key pivot level. If we can get above your 211, close above, next level is your 214, we can move fairly quick back up and towards this general area. So that's what I'm going to be looking for today here on Amazon. Hold above your 211 along with your previous day highs pivot point for a continuation up and towards your 214. So for Amazon, if you can now break back above your 211, hold. I like to see this continuation above your previous day highs, back up and towards your 214.78 here on Amazon. And then Netflix continuation, AMD, a little bit of bounce here with the overall markets. AMD, I like to see a reclaim of your 117.50s. Okay, so yeah, coming into today here for the overall markets, as I mentioned, I'm going to be interested in SPY if we can break above and hold above your 598. If we reject, right, this can also be looking, we could also be looking for the rejection off your 598 for this reversal back down in towards your 595. That's always a possibility. Similar with the Qs as well. SPY looks like it's the name that you want to be trading just because, right, Qs, it's been dragged down by Tesla, as I mentioned. So SPY is going to be the key name. Levels 598 along with your 595. I went over all these tickers here as well. Let me actually scroll down. Let's see. Can someone explain what futures are? I normally trade CFD. That's Forex futures. I'm pretty sure someone can explain that as well. All right. So the news was, yeah, a lot of times, okay, so when we're talking about red folder news events, this is something to keep in mind. So whenever we have red folder news events, a lot of times it's priced in. So if I go into Forex Factory, for example, especially the red folder news at 8:30, usually the actual news in itself does not matter. Unless it's a crazy beat expectations wise, or you have a crazy disappointment, a lot of times, right, it's going to be fairly neutral, right? You want to come into the market whenever you have red folder news event like this, fairly neutral. Just because a lot of times whenever you have this 8:30 candle, what it likes to do is take out your high and then also take out the low here at 8:30. So majority of the times you're going to come into the markets fairly neutral, looking for the reactions that we have off of your candle high and candle low. The only time when we can have continuation off of a news event is if it's unexpected. Like something like Tesla, like this, of course, is a little bit different, but this is a news event that's going to drive the market down. Rarely will you see the market have continuation like this, at least on the major indices like the SPY and Qs, right? This happens quite often on a lot of the tech side, just because we'll have news. There'll be something going on with the market. In this case, right, Elon with Trump, this was a huge news event, and you can see drove the market down. Whereas if we look at this red folder news event, it's not core CPI, it's not core PPI, it's not FOMC. We just have unemployment along with the non-farm enrollment. You can see it's affected the market just a little bit. But yesterday we had bigger news regarding kind of the president with Trump speaking with China. We also had Tesla news. Now you're just going to be looking for, right, the reaction off of your 598, right? Just based off technicals. If you can get above your 598 and hold, we can see this continuation towards the upside. If we break above your 598, reject, we're just going to see this push right back down in towards your previous day close and this 8:30 low here as well. So it's really just based off of technicals. There's some news events that you can decipher that are very bullish and you can just buy or sell just based off of the news event itself. In this case, looking at the red folder news event, right, you're going to be neutral and you're just going to be looking at the reaction that we have off of your key levels that we have laid out. Okay, let's see. Was it SPY? I love when he draws. Love when we draw levels and respect them. Yes, the market may now interpret the news as good. It may interfere with the expected Fed rate in September. Let's see, IWM 54 minutes until open. Thank you. I really appreciate the knowledge and Q Cash. Everyone, at least like the video to get a wise push. Okay. yeah, I went over a lot of these names. If you go back on them, most of the time I already talked about them. But yeah, for the overall markets now, right, we have the levels established. As for Tesla, why is that 325 a key level? That was yesterday's key pivot point. So this is the area that we broke out from. Now it's not as relevant today, but 325 is the day that we gapped up, consolidation, right? Nice push towards the upside. So the only levels we have marked out really was your 325 along with this 338. So once we were able to break back underneath, that's when we had a bigger push towards the downside. Okay. Let me go over this one more time. Yeah, I already went over it, but yeah, keep an eye out on your 598 coming into today, similar with the Qs here as well. I'll actually go over, let me actually see. Now I'll go over a couple more names. Let me go over SMCI. SMCI daily chart, daily gap, as you can see here. Not too much to talk about on this one, but still technically what I'd like to see here on SMCI now is a break back above your 4350s. If we can break back above your 4350s, you can see the right nice continuation back up and towards the highs. HIMS, I already went over HIMS as well. IWM, I'll go over this one. So for IWM, this one actually looks really good. So for the major indices here, IWM, you can see touch here, at least on the daily time frame. We can see this potential bigger daily time frame breakout now on IWM after having a lot of consolidation. So for IWM, you can see how many touches we've had off this general area. 209 reaction. Now what I like to see on IWM, we're now breaking above your 209. Hold, continuation towards the upside just based off the daily time frame. So that's what you'll have for IWM. You can also mark out this level here as well, which is going to be your 211. What I'd like to see is one of two things, right? A lot of consolidation here. I would not like to see kind of your 209 still in play for a bounce. Now you just like to see consolidation, hold above your 211, continuation towards the upside. Okay, that is going to be it for me today. I'm going to get ready for market open. As I mentioned, we'll keep an eye out on the key levels that we have marked out. 598 here on the SPY Qs. I'm not too interested in looking at the Qs just because, right, SPY is going to be the leader, especially with Tesla dropping. We'll also keep an eye out on Tesla as well for potential gap fill back towards the downside. We're going to just draw out our box here in the pre-market. Besides that, keep an eye out on the rest of the names for any sort of relative strength or weakness. And with that being said, I'm actually going to get ready for market open here. So hope you guys did enjoy that. If you did, appreciate if you guys drop me a like and sub. For anyone that is new, right, free watch list in the description. Just a little short video of me talking about what I talked about here in the pre-market. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of the weekend, and I'll see you guys all next week. All right, take care, everyone. Peace.